Hello everyone, my name is Bernadette Rutina from Human Ingredient, and today we're going to look at the third in a series of 3 on communication and conflict. Our session is Conflict Resolution Tips and Strategies. We're going to cover a number of things in this session today, having a look at the types of conflict that occur in the workplace, really having a good look at conflict styles, because we are born with some styles in our communication, and then in our family systems we also learn different styles of conflict as we grow up. We'll have a good look at some strategies to respond to conflict, how you might manage both the task and relationships when you are working with people, because these can often cause conflict, with some people focusing on a task, wanting to get that done, others worried about how the relationships are going. So this provides a good way to cover that. And there's a checklist for holding a conversation when you need to discuss a difficult issue. We will touch on a few other areas as well underneath these. So some of the strategies will include things like mapping conflicts, learning how to step in the shoes of other people and consider broader perspectives, as well as within the conflict styles, we'll have a look at how do they work, which ones are going to work in what types of situations, and even if you are a person who has a certain way of working with conflict, you being able to build your repertoire of styles is really important, especially if you're leading a team in the workplace or a large group of people that you're working with. Now, you would all be familiar with some of these things, and you could add to your list here of the types of conflict that happens at work. So I've just put a few down, but you know there are many. When you see people who are deliberately working alone and not mixing with others, you would generally come to the conclusion that there might be some reason for this, especially if it's been a change in behaviour. So if they normally would be outgoing and working with others, and then they stop doing that, you know, as a leader of a team, a manager in a workplace, you might think, I wonder what's happening here with this person. Why have they withdrawn? You might see people arguing and doing subtle digs to each other. Now, in some workplaces, these things are part of a bit of comic relief, a bit of fun. But in other workplaces, when people start, digging at each other, there can be a little edge to it. So if you're working in an organisation where this is part of the culture and it's a bit of fun, but people really don't take offence, then it's not an issue. But if you see something occurring where it's actually becoming harmful for people, you know that there's a conflict occurring and it's something that needs to be worked with. You will often find people talking behind each other's back in the workplace. There might be corridor conversations that are quite often quite productive, but then if they're about other people and that information is not shared, that can be a major issue. I often find when I'm working with teams and people are in a meeting and they say, yes, we agree, we'll do this, and then they actually don't agree. And often that's because in the team it hasn't been explored fully enough. Some people really don't know what they'd like, or they're not willing to share it at the time. So some of the behaviours could be an indicator of many other things that are going on. And as a leader in your workplace, it's very useful for you to be looking at, well, what sits behind what's happening? Other behaviours that aren't so useful are undermining others. This is another sure sign of conflict in your workplace. Now, Thomas and Kilman many years ago put together a questionnaire and a model for conflict styles. It's one of those particular frameworks that it's almost like it doesn't matter how long ago it was created. It was created in probably around 1980s it would have been, so it's quite a while ago. But this particular framework is used in many places and it's well recognised internationally. In one of the slides coming up, there's a link for you. You can go online and you can fill in your own conflict style and work out what it is that you are most, relating to when you're looking at conflict, and also looking at the other styles. So it's a good self-assessment that you're able to do as part of this session. Now, Thomas and Kelman's work, they really look at two dimensions in conflict. One is the extent of assertiveness in our behaviours with others, and as many of you would know, assertiveness is about letting people know what you need for yourself. Now, you can do that in productive ways, constructive ways with people, or at other times you might find people being so assertive it's almost very confronting for others. So the extreme end of assertiveness is what they're referring to, and there are degrees of that. The other scale is cooperativeness, and when you do the self-assessment, you'll find that you identify with one of these main styles or a couple of them: accommodating, competing, avoiding, collaborating, compromising. And these styles might be underused or overused depending on what you have grown up with, depending on what you might find that you unconsciously do with others. So these are the 5 conflict styles, and you can see when you look at the photos here on the slide that we might assume a bunch of things are going on here. And this is what we do as human beings. We look at people and we make up what's happening. We don't really know what's happening until we start exploring and also are completely aware of our own ways of looking at the world. So one good thing for you to know when you're working with others and you are noticing your own reactions to conflict is think about your perceptions, think about your style, think about your way of dealing with conflict and others, and know that this way that you see the world will influence everything around you. It will influence how you perceive others and what others are doing. So you'll see on this slide also that there's a link where you can go and complete your self-assessment, and you'll have a booklet that goes with this session. Here we see the 2 scales, assertiveness and cooperativeness. You can see at the top end of assertiveness is competing, and the bottom end of assertiveness and cooperativeness is avoiding. So that means avoiding is no focus on yourself at all, but it is also no focus on others. It's actually withdrawing, not putting forward your view, but also not going along with others and not even thinking about their world, withdrawing completely. On the top end of the scale of assertiveness and cooperativeness, in the right corner there is collaborating. Now, collaboration means that you are equally looking at what's important to you as well as what is important to others. And I'll go into this in a bit more detail, but you'll know that collaboration is absolutely essential when you're trying to build ownership in the workplace. Down on the bottom right-hand corner, at the extreme end of cooperativeness, is accommodating others. So this is going along with others, not putting forward your view, but or maybe putting forward your view and then letting go of it. And compromise is right there in the middle. So this means you might put forward your view, others put forward theirs, and you might agree on something that's in the middle, where neither of you get completely what you want in that situation. Have a look at your self-assessment and really look at what is the style that you most prefer. So fill that out and read through it and think about situations in your workplace where you go, well, how do I do this? Where did I learn this in my life? Is this something that is in my family? Did I learn it with others? Did I learn it in the workplace? So think about your preferred style and also how you operate that. And the other thing that would be really essential to think about is, how does your style impact what you do with other people? Where does it work? Where might you change this? So we'll go into a bit more depth here on each one of these. Competing is not giving in to others' viewpoints or what they want, and it's when you stand firm in what you think is the correct way of handling something, the correct approach. When two people are competing, of course, you usually don't get a win-win, and if neither give in, you might come to a stalemate and go nowhere. There are times when they call it, Thomas and Kilman call it competing, but it's not that you're in a race, and it's not that you are, forcing someone else to do something. It basically means that you are really firm in what you think is right, and you're not giving up on that. Now, there are times when you know this is absolutely essential. If you're in an organisation where there is a significant change occurring, or even at times a small change to processes, systems, new programs that might be needed to be used, and there is no negotiation on it. It has to be done. So as a leader, your style in that case would really need to be saying, look folks, this is what we need to do, this is where we need to head. I know that this is a new system and we're unfamiliar with it, but we do need to learn it, we do need to work with it. Let's have some discussions about how we might do it. But it's not a decision that we can say no to, because we have made, as an organisation, a decision that this is where we're heading. Now, this style can resolve disputes quickly, but if people feel cut off and not listened to, then sometimes their productivity can be lowered and morale can be affected. So if you know your natural style is competing, you might think about, how might you create more space to have discussions with people? Now, avoiding, as you remember on the scales that we looked at before, it's right at the bottom. It's neither you standing up for your views or even looking after another person's views. Now, this can be a useful method when you're in a dangerous situation. It can be a useful method when you might need some space. Now, one thing you can do, and if you're a leader in a team and there is conflict, you might say, we're going to take some space here. We're going to stop, we're going to pause, and we might even have two people work on two different projects for a little while and see how that goes. Now, you might at that time, if you're leading the team, really think about, how might we resolve this in a different way, because a long-term effect of avoidance is not a proper resolution at all. Not dealing with conflict indefinitely, as you would know in your own lives, can lead to more significant conflicts over time. Now, accommodating is at the far end of cooperativeness. It's not assertive, it is about putting someone else's needs before your own. It's very useful when the issue maybe is not overly important. Maybe the conflict has been going on for a long time, and you might decide as you weigh things up, actually, it's fine. It's fine to go along with this. It is not just about keeping the peace, but it is knowing when to pick your battles and being thoughtful about it. It can be a choice with a small conflict, and it assists you to actually put focus on the bigger issues. It's highly cooperative, but if you're a person where you regularly accommodate others and you regularly go along with them, or you have people in your team that do that, over time they can feel like it's they never get their way. They don't get their view recognised. So think about this for yourself from your own self-assessment, but think about it, what's happening with others in your team? What are their styles? What do you know about how they work with conflict? Collaboration is fantastic when you have a significant piece of work, and you do need people's ownership on it. You have to consider everybody's needs and wants, and it's very useful in situations where you have the ability to negotiate. It isn't a done deal. People can have a discussion about what's really, really needed. You can talk through the conflict, negotiate a solution, hear from everybody, and frequently it won't be a conflict if this is done well. Collaboration looks after the relationship when the end result is going to have a significant impact on people. When collaboration is not done in times of organisational change, it can result in people being resentful, not feeling heard, leaving their job, or doing undermining of the changes that are occurring. Compromising, we all know compromise. I was working with a neighbourhood group that was in conflict a number of weeks ago, and there was a discussion around car parking, and those of you who might live in a complex of some kind know that this can often be a bone of contention. And we proposed a compromise, and I do remember one fellow in the group said, well, this is actually not a good solution because I don't quite get what I want and neither does the other person. And we made an agreement that this compromise would be something that they could test out, see how it would work, review it in a month's time and see what was possible. So a bit like accommodating, compromising is one where it isn't always a long-term solution, but it can lead to collaboration. It does allow people to have a say, and if you're a leader who is encouraging a level of compromise, especially when the issues aren't significant, you know that you probably can get a good solution and do that quickly. Now, I'm touching on perceptual positions again. For those of you who have seen the other two sessions that I did, this was around looking at your communication. And it is a very, very useful tool to look at your communication in conflict and reducing conflict. You can see here from the model, we have first position, this is you and how you see yourself, identifying your perception and managing your responses. Second position is stepping in the shoes of others. What is it like for them in their world? Now, when you're in conflict, you need to both be aware of yourself and what is going on in you, and also be able to move into the shoes of others and understand their world. And it's not just understanding their world for the sake of solving an issue. It's really stepping into their shoes and maintaining a relationship with them, because then you have the most ability to influence the outcome of a conflict in a good way. Now, third perceptual position is you stepping outside a situation. So see yourself in discussions with people where there has been conflict, and imagine you're the fly on the wall and you're looking at that, and you're looking at yourself and you're looking at another or a few people, and you're going, how are we going? It seems like we're not heading to the place we need to be. This person isn't listening. I've been talking over them. Others have been doing this. So this is a time to stop and pause, reassess where we are, listen to each person, and once again, you're back to stepping in the shoes of others, but also not losing sight of what you think is important. Now, the fourth position is really about recognizing the larger system that you work in, the organisation, the clients that you are working with, the stakeholders that you might need to engage. What is your position in that larger system, and what is the position of others that you are in the conflict with? When you can truly look at that larger system, the solutions that come to you may be quite different to the solutions that you are coming up with when you are thinking of just your view. So see if you can work through that. When you think of a conflict situation, stop, identify what's going on for you. Maybe even identify your own biases, your own assumptions, test them out. Manage your own emotional responses. Step in the shoes of others. What are they thinking? What's important to them? If you are not going to judge them and not be critical of them, what perception might you have that could give you some new insights? Take an objective point of view. Look at your own behaviour, their behaviour. Look at where you might improve and recognise that every single solution in a workplace is part of a larger system, and every single conflict is part of a larger system. So keeping those things in mind, because this is one of the key tools and strategies for working with conflict, and it underpins most of the work, we'll go on to our next piece. So when you are able to step in the shoes of others, and many groups do this, the Australian Conflict Resolution Network has excellent tools, and this is one of their tools, so have a look on their website. They say that one of the most important things for us is to map a conflict, especially when there are a number of people involved. So put the issue in the middle. Now, get really clear, what is the issue? Because many people will have a different view on what the issue is. So that takes time. Agree on the issue. Start identifying who has the different views, who has a different want or need, who has a different concern and issue, and identify each and every one of them. When you are able to step in the shoes of others, and don't forget yourself and what's important to you, put yourself in there, and you start looking at that, you can find as you map a conflict that there will be people with the same interests and concerns. You might find that you have the same concerns as someone else. As soon as you find things in common when you map a conflict, it allows you to come up with strategies. It starts to give you either a compromise or a work towards collaboration. And you might even decide that there's something that is less important to you when you think about what's going on for others, and you might accommodate and let something go. Now, one of the things that I often find, I've put this slide up because it gives you a look of people in all different places in the workplace. When you are mapping the conflict with others, think about what are their jobs, what are their roles. If they are really tied to a certain position, is it because it's part of their job? Is it because their boss has asked them to do this? So keep in mind, as we looked at perceptual positions before, keep in mind the fourth position. Where are you in the whole system? Where are they in the whole system? What pressures do they have on themselves, and what pressures do you have? And how might you work on those things together? Now, if you are working with a group and people have really different views, and you are leading that team towards an outcome, but it feels stuck, this particular way of working through these 4 simple questions that actually have quite a bit in each one of them is very crucial. So, why are we here? And clarify that. Why are we here? How can we create shared meaning together? Set the context, put some time in place, and look at the constraints that we have. Now, most big pieces of work that have some area of conflict in them are not going to be sorted out in a 1-hour meeting. You might get an aspect of it sorted out. So when you look at the time allowed, be realistic. If you cut the time short, you could end up in all sorts of strife over time because you might have been competing and just pushing things through. So look at, why are we here? What's likely to happen? How can we work with each other here? What's the safety we need for us to be able to express what's important? How do we look at our different styles, our personality, our conflict style? What's important to us in our work? What procedures might we put in place, and how can we address any concerns? What are the outcomes we're hoping for? What's the end result from this piece of work? So when you look at the outcomes, you really want to have an agreement about the purpose, the content, the process, and any sensitivities you need to take into account. And lastly, This is a great one to bring a team together. How can we add value? As a group, if we work together in the best possible way, we sort out our conflicts, we work with our clients in a good way, how can we add value? How can we leverage the information that we have, the processes we have in place, the relationships that get a good outcome for us and others? And how do we use the expertise we have in the room, in our team, with others outside that we might bring in? And how do we make sure that what we are doing is credible to others? So these are great questions, and if you're a leader that has a fairly complex task with people with disparate views, see if you can spend time, and you might even break this up and do different meetings for different sections of it and get agreement on them. What does it mean? How will we go about this? And how do we make sure we can add value by using the best of our views? Because conflict can work well for you. Your disparate views, your differences, your really different styles can bring something together that's innovative, that inspires other people. So don't be worried about conflict. Find ways to work with it in a good way. Now, this is another useful tool, and it comes from Susan Scott. And Susan Scott wrote a fantastic book on how we might have some difficult conversations. A very simple checklist here. When you are getting ready to have a conversation with someone, and it's a conversation that is going to be a challenging one, get really clear for yourself what the issue is and be specific. Give examples. Write this down before you even have the conversation. Select one or two specific examples that actually demonstrate what you're talking about. Now, one caveat I put in here is be really careful not to be blaming other people as you are describing a situation. Describe it objectively. This was said, this was done. Don't put any interpretations on it. This is a tough one to do because when we are upset with something, we do put our interpretation on it. Get really specific and objective. So write it down, go back and check it. You might write down how you feel about it. So you might find something frustrating. You might be disappointed at how things were done. It might be that a decision was made in your workplace without your knowledge, you weren't involved, and you feel left out. And you say that. And it's not the other person's fault, it's you describing how you feel. Clarify what's at stake for you and for others. Identify anything that you might be contributing to the problem. So initially you might have been reacting. You might have gone, that's not fair. Why did you do this? These are things you've done before. Now, when you identify your contribution to the problem, this frequently will have a good effect on the situation because another person is more likely to put their contribution there. Now, if they don't, that's okay. You've done the right thing. You've let them know your contribution. Let them know you'd like to resolve what's going on and even start to propose how that might be happening. But before you do that, invite them to respond. Ask them, what is it like for them? So this is you encouraging them to express themselves and you doing your best to step in their shoes, even when it's been a very challenging issue for the two of you. There'll be an article in your workbook on this one, so you can have a good look at it, and the tool will be explained in more detail. You can use this for yourself, you can use it for mediating with others, and you can encourage your own team members to do self-reflection with it as well. Now lastly, some of the reflections that you might have as you've been listening to this might be about how you can do things differently. It could be about even situations that you might find yourself in your own home. How might you create a new way of working with others? We often think when we are with people who know us well that it's okay just to be our normal selves and do conflict the way we've always done it. But if we really want to be improving ourselves as leaders and leaders in our workplaces, we have to think about who we are in our whole lives. So take some time to reflect on that, and it's been great working with you again on this session. I look forward to catching up with you next time and hoping you are applying what you've been learning. Thank you.